Okay, Martin, awesome. You are the president and co-founder of Speakers Spotlight. And if I get this right, you guys started back, hold on now, 1995. And I understand you left a career in law. And, one of the things that's most fascinating to me about this in starting this Speaker Spotlight was this is pre-dot-com boom or around that time. And that to
Yeah.
me was when the internet kind of became real, like 99, 2000. And I remember all this talk about brick and mortar.com, the world's about to change. No, it's already changed. A lot of hype around that was like, get on board, the technology is changing the world. And it did. And, there was certainly a lot of disruption. It reminds me a little bit of what's going on now. But maybe before touching on some of that, I would love to just hear, if you want to introduce yourself, what you guys have built, what you're building right now.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. So, yeah, Martin Perelmuter, I'm president and co-founder of Speaker Spotlight. And as you mentioned, we started this bureau back in 1995. It was a lifetime ago, 31 years now. My wife and I, we got married, we quit our jobs, we moved, and we started a business all within about a month. So if you ever look at the list of like most stressful things to do, it's like change of job, change of relationship status. Moving is probably the worst. Anyone who's had to move recently. So we had a lot of change back then, and we launched into this business. We didn't really know what we were doing, to be completely honest. We didn't have any industry experience or contacts, and very little business experience at all. So we just came in sort of as a blank slate and just started to learn as much as we could about the industry. As you mentioned, it was the early days of the internet, so it was actually not even that easy to find information back then. You couldn't just Google something. So we had to do a lot of calling, a lot of reaching out to people, just tracking people down, trying to learn as much as we could about the industry. And thanks to a tremendous amount of hard work, lots of lucky breaks, and the kindness of many people along the way, here we are 31 years later, and the business has definitely grown beyond what we had ever envisioned it in the early days.
Very cool. So can you, in really simple terms, explain exactly what the problem is that Speaker Spotlight helps to solve? And maybe just go right through from, let's say, a target speaker, someone who would use your services, hears about you, interacts with you, like take us through that to the point where they're on stage or on stages.
Yeah, well, we really serve two clients in a sense. We have the speakers who are, in a sense, our clients, and then we have the conference organizers, meeting professionals who put on events and hire speakers, and those are really our true clients. So I'm going to talk a little bit to each of those. So in terms of the speakers, I mean, it's someone has a particular expertise or experience that may make them of interest to organizations, or they just want to go out and get their message out. And so, our job in that case is to help them essentially, not just figure out what the message really is in some cases, but really more is help them connect with the right audiences. And so help them get on different stages, different platforms in front of more people so that their message can get out. Sometimes that may be someone who's written a book, maybe it's a best-selling book and they want to get out and speak about it. Maybe they've accomplished something great, they won an Olympic gold medal or overcome some type of obstacle, or had a big success with a startup perhaps, and they want to go out and speak. So those are the speakers. The meeting professionals, the conference organizers, they're putting on events. They have infinite choices in terms of who to put on that stage in front of their attendees, and it's obviously a really important decision. You want to get it right, and so really at the end of the day, our job is to help those clients make better buying decisions. So find the right speaker for that particular event, that audience at that time, and so really help them, identify and secure those speakers, and then manage all of the details and logistics that lead up to the event and make their job as easy as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to me. There's got to be a gap between when someone, decides, hey, I'm thinking about speaking, or on the first hand, and then they come across and they're like, hey, I'm interested and willing to do this, and you start to, like you mentioned, say, well, okay, that's great, like help them clarify their message so they have like a very clear signal that's being sent out, which is important to be able to have it resonate with an audience, which would help to make the flip side of the coin of people you serve, the actual organizers, make it easier for them to see the value that's brought for their audience. So how do you do that? How do you help them with that? Do you point them in a direction? Do you coach them through that? Do you have a process you take them through?
Yeah, so in some cases they come to us and it's mostly, if not fully formed, mostly there, and so they don't need a lot of help in terms of honing the message. It's really just getting the word out. But sometimes there's people that reach out to us that we see the potential with, but they haven't really figured out what exactly the message is. And one of the big things is understanding. I think you sort of mentioned this or alluded to it. Is when an organization brings in a speaker, there's some type of ROI that they want, right? They're investing in that person. They're paying a fee to bring that person in, put them on a stage in front of their people, and there's an investment of time as well, which is probably the most valuable thing. You've got, in some cases, hundreds or maybe thousands of people who are going to spend an hour of their life listening to this person. So you want to make sure that they get something out of it, that the individual audience members take something away that maybe helps them do their job better, or helps them perform better at work, at home, maybe in their community, whatever the objective may be. And then for the organization hiring them, there's an objective. So that's really key as well, and making sure that the speaker is going to deliver a message that's going to help move the organization forward. Now, from the speaker's point of view, often the speaker they have a message, and it may be important to them, but the question is, how is this going to be of important sort of interest to organizations that might hire them? And so sometimes we really have to work with them to make sure that they're not just talking about something they're interested in, but actually how can their experience, their expertise relate to an audience. And that's really one of the key things is it's great, lots of people who can deliver a great talk, have a great message, can share some stories, but what are the audiences actually going to walk away and take from that talk? And so we're not really speech coaches ourselves, but sometimes we'll sit down with speakers and give them some tips or some ideas on how they can make it better. And sometimes we'll actually refer them to people who are professional speech coaches who can actually help them deliver a better presentation, and they need more work in that sense.
Mm-hmm. So the other thing that comes to mind for me, and I guess maybe you mentioned helping people to get the message out. One of the terms that we've used over the last few years is that we help companies or brands to get their message through, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's all encompassing from developing a brand, messaging, etc. Whether you're building a site or a campaign or ads or whatever, all the way through. So I'm curious to know, on the outskirts of some of this activity, do you feel like you have seen, or you guys have done some of the work that goes into like amplifying a message that's already gone out? So let's say you have a star speaker, and they've been on some stage. If you're trusting that event to then capture it properly and then have that amplification in the digital world, whether it's with shorts or with articles or how it shows up online, and then also the lead up to that, being able to properly leverage, especially when there's star power in the mix, leverage that for ticket sales or to drive interest in an event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the industry's changed a lot, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say. And so the use of video, and whether it's, like you say, capturing video at an event and a speaker, getting these clips and sharing them, afterwards on social media to help promote what they do, or creating some video in advance in the event to help generate, if it's a ticketed event or public event, to generate interest and attendance. That can be very helpful. Also, organizations will often use some clips after to, again, if it's an event where it's public facing, they want to sort of share, some highlights from the event afterwards and sort of keep the message going, create awareness. All those things are very helpful. And we find that, video is extremely helpful. There's a speaker named Sean Kanungo who's based here in Canada, but he speaks all over the world. And he's probably done this better than anyone in terms of capturing video from his presentations and then just finding usually just, 1 or 2 short clips. So he's putting out content after every talk that's not just promotional, but that's actually really helpful. And that's why I think his messages have resonated so well, is because it's actually useful content that he is putting out so that not only the people in the room who happen to be at the event can hear him, but he can reach a much wider and broader audience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think some people refer to it as a content waterfall. Some people have systems around it. Back, I think it was 2018, we were doing some stuff where we would say like content multiplication. So there was an event that we did that was focused around the Bitcoin community. And back 2017, 2018, and this, a series of speakers. So we captured all of that. And I remember once you had the actual, like the raw ingredient of the talk, from there we would do that where the waterfall from there could become these. You have the main piece that lives on. You have a written article that comes out of it. You have shorter segments, these shorts. Then you have stills with quotes, and then so you see that. And I can't remember how many pieces it was for every one talk, but all of that was useful for the next conference, and it was sort of banked, and then it got used that way.
Yeah.
And I remember that was so helpful. But I see that that was coming up on almost 10 years ago. So. It's interesting to see how much that is done now and how important that is when you have a fresh, clear signal, especially if it's confirmed on a main stage that has other media or other things around it, to take that and really let the ripples, of it go out there, ideally in a permanent, lasting way across different platforms.
Yeah, no, it's super interesting, and I think the value of events and meetings has changed and increased. One thing is obviously coming, out of COVID and still a lot of people working remotely or virtually, bringing people together. It's a big investment, and it's really important to get it right. But also, how can you, like you say, amplify or those messages and make the event bigger than just a couple days maybe at a particular location and reach a broader audience. And, by sharing video, again, pre-event, post-event, it can really help in a number of ways. Organizations have different reasons for putting on events, and being able to amplify the messages, I think, can really be a valuable part of it.
One of the things that, we've certainly thought a lot about over the last couple of years is like, and you ask this for a brand, like, what is it you do? What problem do you solve? Who does it help? That's your target audience. And then why does it matter, right? Why should anybody care? And I like those questions because when you zoom out and look at anything that we do in life, it's like, well, why does this matter at all? And sometimes either groupthink or just, habit or behavior, that seems like it's established in a certain industry or culture. We can be doing things that really maybe we don't necessarily need to be doing as much of or need to be doing at all. But the thing that struck me, specifically looking at your website, was this idea that there are people with important stories to tell. And not everybody that necessarily has a powerful story to tell that could be very important or helpful for others, life-changing even. Not everybody that has that value, that piece of the puzzle, necessarily has the other piece of the puzzle with the resources or the connections to be able to get that message out there, to get on stages, and to do that. And so it's interesting to me that you guys really are a force multiplier, in the sense that you have the ability to find these either diamond in the roughs or flat out diamonds, like these stories that could have potential to, inspire, transformation, inspire change, or in people that has a ripple effect into culture or, other areas.
Yeah, it's a really exciting part of what we do. Obviously, like you say, there's the diamonds. It's really exciting to get to work with people who are already well known and have accomplished amazing things, and just help them get their message out to more people. It's equally, if not more, exciting to work with those people that nobody's ever heard of, but we feel have an important message, and help them, tell their story, get their message out into the world, and ultimately have a positive impact. And that's a really fun part of the job for us, is to try to identify who these people might be before anyone else has, and help really make a difference in their lives, in telling their stories, and in the lives of the people who hear them, that hopefully they can really have a positive impact on. So, that's a exciting part of the job for us, and I think that's one of the reasons clients call on us sometimes, is they want to know, like, who do we think is the next person that might not be on people's radar just yet, but that maybe in the future, and they can get them while they're still affordable, and really, exceed audience's expectations in terms of what they're expecting.
That is so cool. So, you're really potentially paying attention to, multiple channels like the news, cultural happenings, social media, that is interesting to think about how it is that the radar. And, I'd be curious to know what tools you're using or, for some of that. But even just the idea of like just keeping a finger to the pulse of what's happening seems important.
It absolutely is. It's one of the things that I think why after 31 years, still doing this and doing it with as much, if not more, enthusiasm than ever, is that, you're constantly learning and you're constantly trying to understand, what are the forces that are impacting people's lives, people's businesses, their work, and identifying people who might have a unique voice out there that can really help and that needs to be heard. It's a range of ways that we find these people. Sometimes it is just on social media, hearing or seeing something that jumps out and then sort of doing a deeper dive into it and learning more about that person. There's a speaker I learned about a few years ago just from listening to a podcast, and they had some really interesting insights on AI and digital disruption. And, we reached out to them and began working with them. Sometimes it's clients telling us about people that they've seen at different events and we've had some real great finds that way too, where someone sees a speaker and they might not be the big main keynote speaker at an event. They might be doing a breakout session in a smaller room, but they're really exceptional. And if we can help that person go from doing the breakout sessions to eventually doing the bigger keynotes, then that's a real value that we can bring to them and obviously to the audiences that can benefit from listening or hearing them. So it's constantly just trying to be aware of what the zeitgeist is what we're hearing and seeing from our clients in terms of the types of topics, the types of issues that are of importance to their organizations and their people.
Where does your positioning in the market sit compared to, let's say, corporate sponsorship or influencer sponsorship, where a company says, hey, look, we know grassroots is important. We know social media really is just media. Maybe they've factored in, or they're curious or have an established strategy in that space. Is there overlap with you guys on that front, where a corporation might come and say, hey, look, we're looking for somebody, maybe it's a microphone brand or something that does hardware in the music industry, and they're like, hey, who do you know that has a voice that is, has influence, has reach, but is also, fits with our sort of brand in whatever those values look like?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because they're related and sort of complementary services, I guess. And so we actually, about 8 years ago now, started a sister company that focuses on connecting organizations and brands with voices in sort of the non-speaking world. So, Speaker Spotlight, our core business, is essentially helping to put keynote speakers on a stage in front of an audience at a live event, also obviously in virtual events now as well. But this other company, the Spotlight Agency, actually looks at how can we help individuals get their messages out, and how can we help brands find the right spokesperson or people to help amplify their brand in a non-speaking event. So that might be through social media posts, that might be through traditional media, that might be through a number of different ways outside of an event. And sometimes they overlap too. And then we have clients who will bring someone in to speak at a conference and also do other things for them as well beyond that help them sort of amplify their own brands. So they're complementary, I would say, and they're somewhat related, but also quite a bit different. The focus really, I think, for conferences, for events, is learning and growth. So that we always say, we don't want to be in the slot filling business. We're in the behavior change business. So it's really about people coming to an event, hearing, seeing a speaker, and then hopefully taking something that they've learned and applying it, again, to their work, to maybe their personal life or beyond. So, so that's, as opposed to, I have 60 minutes slot to fill at a conference, and can you fill that slot? in some ways what we do, but it's really a lot more than filling a slot. It's about impacting behavior. And that's, that is also what sort of, influencers to a certain degree do. They want to help brands influence behavior of potential customers for them. So it's different, but it's kind of related as well.
What percentage of the pie would you say is online speaking events? I know the culture's changed certainly since 2020, but do you find like 25% of what you guys are doing is, someone who's got, whether it's leadership or it's company wide or it's a mastermind group or it's something where you're finding, you're placing some of these these people that have the ability to so impact someone's psychology that behavior can be impacted?
Yeah, it's about 10 to 15% now of what we're doing are virtual events. So prior to 2020, it was close to zero. Everything pretty much was in person with a couple of rare exceptions. Then obviously once the pandemic hit and everybody was sort of stuck at home, it became 100% of our business for a while until things started to open up again. And we're finding that it's sort of settled in at about 10 to 15% of our business now. And it's certain types of events. If you're doing an event, for example, for International Women's Day or for Black History Month, and you want to bring in a speaker to your organization, there's challenges with that. There's space challenges. If you've got a large organization, you got a few thousand employees, you can't bring them all into one space. It's very expensive to do it. It's not necessarily convenient, but you could, and also the cost of doing that is enormous. Flying people in, putting them up in a hotel, feeding them, all of these things. But you could do a virtual event, and that way it's completely inclusive. Everybody's invited to participate. You don't have to figure out who gets invited and who doesn't. It's an hour of someone's day. They can take a break, at lunch or whatever it is, and stop what they're doing and watch the talk online. So we're seeing for events like that have particular themes, it's very, very effective. I think that people miss the in-person, face-to-face of conferences, and the value of that goes well beyond what happens on the stage and in the conference room. It's those meetings outside, in the lobby, at a cocktail hour or whatever it is, networking breaks, that drive a lot of the value in events. So thankfully, that is back in full swing, and that's the vast majority of our business. But again, for certain events, the virtual component is really important and is really actually very, very effective, cost effective, as well as effective in terms of scaling a message.
So where do you see this going? And typically the last question I usually ask is, what do you need most to grow right now? Mm-hmm. And I would sort of pair that up with what, if you were looking out, 5 years, or, it's August 2030, what are you seeing, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years from now? Like, I know that that's a big spread, but do you see a directional, that you're wanting to move in?
Yeah, I mean, our thing has always been, we're just trying to get better. We want to be a better company 6 months or a year from now than we are today and that we were 6 to 12 months ago. So constantly just looking at getting better at what we do, improving the service that we provide, improving the way that we can help our clients make decisions. That's really key. Obviously, identifying talent is incredibly important. If we can try to identify who might be someone who has a really in-demand message, down the road, then that can certainly help us. Ways of helping our clients make decisions as well is really important. How AI can help in this, like most industries, we're looking at different ways that can help, and whether there's ways that it can help augment what we do. But I don't necessarily see like a big a big change necessarily happening. We've had a lot of change in our industry in the last 5 or 6 years. More change in the last 5 or 6 years than in the previous 25, I would say. So I think we're now in a mode where things have sort of settled, and certainly there's still going to be lots of change to come, and technology is going to drive some of that. But I think that it's really just how do we get better at solving the problems that our clients have, and that's what we're striving to do all the time.
Yeah, what is that? Get 1% better every day, and the compounding of that is like. Yeah, very cool. Well, Martin, thank you so much. I think if anyone, from what I've heard, if anyone is curious about speaking, getting onto stages, maybe wanting to branch out from the online into the real world, or they've got some level of the physical world, if they have some degree of career or influence established in that space, and they're wanting to potentially find a way to expand that out, to come and check it out. Speaker Spotlight, and the URL is speakers.ca to check it out.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Caleb.
Awesome.
Yeah, great to chat with you. Great questions, and look forward to any feedback that anybody has.
Cool.